Welcome to the Hentai Literature Club. I am Josh from Caffeinated Conquest. If you are wondering what this podcast is going to be, this is a podcast where we want to examine hentai doujins through the lens of literary criticism. As I said, I'm Josh from CAFCON. I'm one of the writers of some of the videos. We'll go ahead and go around and introduce the rest of the people we have here. This is just going to be kind of an episode 0 where we introduce what hentai is if for whatever reason you clicked on this and you didn't already know what it was, and exactly what we're going to be doing with it. So, Chaz, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Chaz LaBelle. I am a writer and the guy whose fault it is when things go wrong at CAFCON. I self-publish my own stuff on Amazon. I am the storyteller for the World of Darkness live plays, or actual plays, that we do at CAFCON. So basically, anything I'm doing at any given time revolves around writing or creating fiction or telling a story somehow. I also do freelance writing, but it's neither here nor there.
Another member of Caffeinated Conquest, Xavier, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience?
I believe I need no introduction. I am Xavier. I am a content creator for CAFCON, and probably most likely to commit suicide within the next 10 years. Second most likely.
Is that because you're a man or Native American?
Yes.
Both, okay. As part of Caffeinated Conquest, Austin, would you like to introduce yourself?
I am Austin. I'm in the military, and I'm only allowed to leave once a year.
So we try to get him in on as much CAFCON content as we can while he's here, and so far we have succeeded on one video.
Melinda, would you like to introduce yourself?
I am Melinda. I am Charlie's girlfriend, and I also do streaming for Twitch at Gothi Otaku. And yeah, that's it.
Anai, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Anai, and I don't do videos, but I have a bachelor's in American literature, so yeah.
As do I, and that is part of the what led to the creation of this.
I have to say, I'm sorry, I just feel super outclassed. I'm just like sitting across super smart, professional, educated people, and I'm just the hillbilly. I write stories.
You feel outclassed. Excuse me?
So we're going to kind of introduce hentai and what we're doing here to the audience. So who here would like to say what is hentai?
Xavier.
Hentai.
The residential expert.
Hentai is art. So
It is.
bottom line is hentai is porn, but anime porn, or rather Japanese style art pornography.
It's also the literal meaning of pervert.
Yes.
So you get insulted every time you look that up.
If I'm not mistaken, hentai, as we use it, is shortened for something, isn't it? Isn't hentai part of 2 phrases?
Not that I've heard.
It might be. I don't know. They have a lot. They don't have a lot of sounds, but reading it differently is what changes it.
Then who would like to explain what hentai is typically about?
Melinda.
That's a hard question. I don't really know. It's about a lot of things. Just sex all the time.
It's about sex. Sometimes there's life lessons, but usually it's sex.
Yeah, it's porn, but it also typically has a narrative aspect to it, in that it's usually it has a story to it. It's not like Western pornography where.
I mean, let's be honest. It's kind of like Western pornography.
I say that because Western pornography sometimes gets straight to the point, so to say. And
Lemon stealing whores.
Yeah, and the fact that it gets to the sex right away.
I mean,
I guess it's more relatable to Western erotica than it is to Western pornography, is what I would say.
okay, that's a fair comparison. Although I would say that there's a couple of texts on today's docket that didn't waste much page count.
So, who here would like to explain what format hentai usually takes?
Are you talking about?
Hentai comes in more than one form.
Oh, well, I mean, it's usually in a manga.
Isn't it usually like animated, and then I would say that the anime is more popular than the manga, honestly.
Yes, however, more often than not, it is a manga.
It starts as manga, just like anime.
Yeah, for people who don't know, manga is essentially
comic books.
Yeah, Japanese comic books, and that's usually the form that I think it's usually the form hentai takes, but it's also animated as well.
If it's particularly good. Or not as good, and you just want to see what it looks like.
Honestly, I didn't even know there was comic porn until I met Xavier, so... I always thought it was mostly an anime thing. Well,
What?
Really?
Well, that also gets into
Really?
personal experience, right? I guess that's a good question to ask right now. Is like, how did everybody here at this table come to discover what hentai was?
I had the internet at my fingertips.
Was there a particular experience though, where you remember where you kind of discovered what it was?
No, I remember just being a weird, horny 13-year-old, and I looked up weird stuff on Facebook. And
on
I found-
Facebook?
Yeah.
I'm using Facebook very wrong.
MySpace. MySpace, not Facebook.
Well, Chaz, you had a story. What were you going to say?
I remember I was, must have been about 14 or 15 years old. I had just got into high school, and I was at the library one day, and I had a friend next to me who was downloading game ROMs, because this was back in the day when you could hack the PSP and then just put emulators on it. So he was downloading game ROMs, and we were talking about it, and he was teaching me all the websites he uses. And he was like, but don't go to this website, because I downloaded some stuff and it just turned out to be hentai. And then he made like this really disgusted face, which now I'm pretty sure is bullshit. Like, don't pretend, dog. We know what we're about now. But
So gross.
and then I had no idea what the word meant, right? Until one day, just out of curiosity, I decided to punch it into Google. I'm like, oh, I see. But although to be fair, I was aware that anime porn was a thing. I didn't know it had a name, but I was a big fan of G4 Tech TV way back in the day, and like X-Play and videos like that were constantly making jokes about anime porn and Sexy Beach too. So I knew there was a thing, but I had no idea there was this whole world at my fingertips of anime titties.
Although I discovered videos first instead of...
Austin, what was your first experience?
Don't cream on your laptop.
Austin, would you like to tell us what your first experience with hentai was?
Not the same as his. Heard it, Googled it. Spent a lot of time Googling it.
Xavier, what was your first experience with hentai?
Oh, he created it.
So,
The founding father.
what happened was, Charlie, you're not the first Italian I knew.
That seems like the beginning to an ominous story. Like I need to get ready to apologize for my heritage.
You're not the first Italian I knew.
God damn it, Carlo Martino.
The first, hardcore Italian dude I knew, who shall remain anonymous, he's actually the one that was just like, hey man, have you heard of this hentai stuff? I was just like, what? No, I haven't heard of hentai. I was like, well, it's like anime, but there's sex. I'm like, well, what level of sex? And a few Google searches later, various levels of sex. And from then on, I just... It's become such a common thing now. It's just like,
You're desensitized.
I am desensitized now. Between hentai and fucking sites like rotten.com, I got inured to a lot of stuff real quick.
That's what me and my friend were discussing the other day. I'm pretty desensitized to it myself. You find some weird stuff.
I'm just gonna have to keep upping the ante at some point.
Okay, so when you said you're most likely to kill yourself, I didn't think you were talking about autoerotic asphyxiation. Just please tell me we're not gonna find you in a hotel room somewhere with a scarf around your neck and thigh-high fishnets.
No, probably not fishnets.
Oh, you're more like a silk kind of guy?
I like the way it feels on my skin.
What about you, Anai? What was your first experience or encounter with hentai?
It wasn't anything that was talked about. It was just kind of like with my friends. I mean, it was just kind of something it was on the internet and I came upon it. Not literally.
Not when company was present.
I think my first experience with hentai was I remember, I believe I was in 6th or 7th grade. There was, yeah, basically there was a female classmate of mine who was missing one day, and I remember asking one of my friends, "Hey, what happened to so and so?" And she was like, "Oh, she got caught in the computer lab looking at hentai." And I was like, "What's hentai?" And I basically got the same explanation as most of you. Is like, "Oh, it's like anime, but it's porn." And then, much like everybody else, I Googled it, and I was like, "That is exactly what this is. This is anime." But it's porn, which I thought was interesting because I think almost all of us here, our first introduction to hentai involved both the internet as well as seeing hentai in its video format rather than its manga format.
Also, hearing about it from somebody else, which makes me wonder, like, who was hentai patient zero? Like, when did it jump the Pacific?
We will get into that later. But yeah, like it's that's what it is. That's.
It is
What
just
was everyone's first video,
sexy
though?
I can remember that because
I can remember mine too.
the first one I saw is apparently a pretty popular one. When I looked it up, it was La Blue Girl.
Really?
Yeah.
Mine was two different ones because I watched them in the same day. Mine was Bible Black. Oh my god, that's horrifying.
Bible Black and La Blue Girl.
I think it was like the Moonlight Lady or something, but like Bible Black is the one that really stuck because it was so messed up.
Yeah, because that one has like a cult and
Yeah, it's like black
Futanari and
magic.
stuff
It was
like
it was a Futanari screwing a girl on top of a pentacle, and I was like, and her belly was like filled, and I was like, okay, what did I stumble upon? This is horrible.
Sounds like Evergen.
That's what we do on Saturday nights.
all the way through.
Does anybody else remember what their first hentai was?
So my first actual hentai experience was not a full hentai. It was actually a hentai parody, and that's because it was Newgrounds.
Oh, they used to have hentai games and stuff.
Yes.
Didn't they?
Oh god, yeah.
But I guess the first actual hentai that wasn't a parody I saw was, I remember it had tentacles and non-consensual sex, as you know tentacles do. I think it was on. I think it was taking place in a subway. I don't know. It was so long ago.
I think it's interesting that what we've mentioned has already covered quite a few hentai tropes. the tentacles, the non-consensual, Futanari.
That was my first
subways.
hentai game with tentacles.
So I guess that's a pretty good segue into the next question I kind of had for everybody. Is what is it that you think makes hentai appealing? Well, why not actual life pornography or Western pornography? Because
It's a lot of different kinds of fantasies.
It's also
They're just weird.
I think a lot of what makes hentai so popular is a lot of what makes anime itself so popular. One, it's a very appealing art style. Two, the women in anime are drawn in such a way for, I'm like, do you understand what I mean? Like the eyes. For some reason, I think the big eyes attract a lot of people, or just the way they're drawn. Also, like their body types, as we are about to discuss, can be very far accentuated one way or the other. It's a very malleable art form, if that makes sense. So I think people get attracted to anime first, and then, human beings as sexual creatures, oh, there's porn that looks exactly like this. Sign me the fuck up.
Rule 34 is a real genetic thing, guys.
does anybody else have any input onto what you think makes hentai appealing?
Well, I think part of it
It doesn't have to be what's appealing to you. It can be.
Well, see, now this is going to sound worse. Part of it is because it is a fantasy and no real people are used, there's certain restrictions that don't have to be adhered to, like human anatomy.
Yeah.
Who's that favorite of yours, John something?
John K. Peta.
We'll get to him later.
John K. Peta, he's actually a Westerner who's making hentai, if I'm
He is
not
a man
mistaken.
without limits.
Like, have you ever tried to watch tentacle porn but not animated? It looks weird and it doesn't work.
There's live action tentacle porn?
Yes,
Yeah.
especially one with Hitomi Tanaka. Great.
How? They have to have like
It's
George
like-
Lucas tentacle puppets
It's
going up there or
literally
something.
fake like really obviously fake tentacles that just shoot jizz all over the place, and it's like it doesn't work as nicely.
Now, see that I think. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
Just it's not CGI tentacles like they made.
No, it's
tentacles
actual
for
like prop tentacles that look really bad.
Big black rubber things.
See, I think that came about because of hentai first, and then like dudes
got
are like,
popular.
yeah, hey, I'd like to see this with a real girl who's not animated, and Hitomi Tanaka was like,
Yeah, let's go.
paycheck, let's do this.
Yeah, going into I think the fact that it's a place where fantasies that you probably couldn't engage with it in reality, to me, is what seems to make a huge amount of the appeal.
True, but why do you think that Western animated porn is not as popular? Now, I'm not saying it's not, because I know that exists too, but I don't think it's anywhere near as ubiquitous as hentai is.
I have to imagine, that's a really interesting question, right? Because I imagine it's simply just because the Japanese decided to animate porn first. That might not be true. However, they're the first people that I guess it sort of became a widespread thing, because I do know there is like animated cartoon pornography from decades past that exists.
Which is awful, by the way.
Well, I mean, like, what do you think we did before we had cameras? People have been drawing porn since like the Middle Ages. Hitler, as a matter of fact, big fan of drawn porn. Also, one testicle.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the history, not the history, but I'm familiar with the existence of like erotic art throughout history. But like, I don't know. That's an interesting question. Why Westerners have the ability to animate pornography? Why is, or maybe it's just a bias we have that we are nerds, and nerds tend to know about anime, and nerds can be kinky people, which leads to watching animated pornography.
I still argue that it comes down to the art style. I think the art style is very appealing. I think that's what brings Westerners to anime in the first place, and I think
It's
I've
realistic,
explained.
but it's not
I was gonna say
uncannily realistic.
It's not Lola.
it's usually like better art style. Like it's a more appealing.
Yeah, that's a good
It just
point.
looks nicer.
Especially for sex, right? Because you don't want, most people don't want to see like fucking old timey Disney.
Fucking Steamboat Willie thrusting into Minnie.
Yeah,
Whistling.
Nobody wants to see that. That's kind of weird and gross.
Oh, I'm kind of interested now because it sounds funny as hell.
I'm sure there's been a resurgence with Cuphead.
Hang on. Steamboat Willie, Rule 34.
So once again, a nice segue into the next question I had. We've discussed the country of origin, but do you all know where hentai originates from outside of the country, which is Japan?
No.
Does anybody here happen to know where the genesis of hentai was?
The genesis of hentai.
No.
I'm assuming you mean drawn pornography.
Not drawn pornography, but we said before hentai is usually porn in manga or anime form. I was wondering if anybody here happened to know when that first happened.
Wasn't that like really long time ago? I don't remember what year, but
It's not quite what I was looking for, but
It's something. For those of you that, well, I guess everyone can't see. It's
oh no.
Steamboat Willie making Swiss cheese with his wiener out of regular cheese.
Hands-free Swiss cheese.
From what I researched, it seems that most people seem to put the genesis of Japanese erotic art. It goes back several hundred years, but most people know the Fisherman's Wife painting, which some of you might be familiar with.
yeah.
Which is an image of a Japanese woman on the floor receiving cunnilingus from an octopus.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've seen that.
Why do I know about that? What the fuck have I been doing on the
I think I
internet?
told you about that.
It's a meme, and they also reference it in the anime Samurai Champloo.
Oh.
I was able to do a bit of cursory research, and apparently the advent of hentai as we know it, and apparently hentai is something we call it, apparently Japanese people usually call it a edo anime or edo manga for erotic anime or erotic manga. But
Well, yeah, because they're not just going to call it pervert.
Yeah, like there are collections of there's collections of erotic art in manga form, I think going back to like the early 1900s in Japan. But creating manga with erotic storylines apparently goes back to, I believe, the late 70s. Which leads to hentai started coming to the West in the 90s through people posting stills taken from erotic Japanese games and posting them online for people to see, as well as pages from hentai doujins. And for those of you who don't know what a doujin was, it's an independent work in Japan. It can be an anime, a video game, or a manga. What were you about to say, Xavier?
It's just pictures and everyone else's sauce. I'm interested in this. Where does it come from?
So who would kind of like to talk about where you can find hentai now? What originally hentai was something that you had to be Japanese to get because you had to be there in the country where it was printed.
Google.
And Google, the internet. Where on the internet do people usually tend to find this?
Hentai Haven. For the videos, anyway.
Yeah, for the videos. I used to go to Faku. That was a really cool place because everybody was nice, but then they went dark side and got subscriptions only. And then
True.
So I still don't like hentai, but I think that has one of the broadest, I guess, search parameters. Mainly because they don't care, and so there's a lot of tags that I don't ever want to see on anything for any reason, and I only know that because in hentai. It's an awful, depraved place. You guys
Never will you find a more wretched scum of villainy.
So essentially what it boils down to is people seem to collect and translate hentai themselves and then put it up on the internet for other people to see, and they aggregate it into websites.
I have to wonder about the kind of person that does that, right? It takes a certain amount of passion to do the kind of stuff that we do. It takes a certain amount of passion to dedicate time to doing anything. But who is like, man, this is great porn. I want everyone else to be able to follow the story.
I mean, there's also part of it is, I mean, not all of it, obviously, because some people don't make a whole lot, but porn is kind of lucrative.
It's a pretty common thing that's said when it comes to technology, that a lot of technology gets put forward because people can use it to view and experience pornography. For example, VHS tapes, part of the reason VHSs started to become more popular was because people could use it to watch pornography. In addition to printed magazines, people could use it to witness pornography, and now with things like VR gaming gets a bit of a push because you can use it to experience virtual pornography.
Which, so it's currently at that level where I don't want that, right? Like, we have not reached VR sophistication where, like, holy shit, this is so realistic. It's still very awkward, and that's not the kind of porn I'm interested in. Maybe.
Well, you define awkward.
So they're very clearly.
Well, everything's tunnel vision, first off. You can very
Yeah.
clearly tell
There's
that
that.
you're very bottlenecked into what you should be focusing on instead of what is a normal peripheral vision. Very bottlenecked, it becomes very obvious. This is what you should be focusing on.
Her titties flopping around while you imagine her jumping on your dick.
We've not reached a point in technology where your hips can, in fact, move on their own.
I've been jacked.
That has to have happened in somebody's Shadowrun game, though. Just somebody was experiencing virtual pornography and they got attacked.
Somebody's hijacked my cyber dong. Guys, get away! It's got a gun.
Just straight
It's
up out
cocked,
of
it's loaded, and it's moving on its own.
just straight out of From Dusk Till Dawn. So here's some of the last questions I have. Who is it that you think reads hentai, and who do you think is the target audience?
Probably a lot of male.
I mean, most definitely males, right? Because everybody assumes that males are the more.
Provocative.
No, women are the provocative ones. Men are the more, I guess, sexually active at a younger age, right? That's the assumption, or rather, sexually interested, and also to the point of depravity. Versus, I mean, there's obviously things for females, right?
Yes.
Yaoi is probably the most popular hentai that is typically made for a female audience.
Yeah, we are. You can tell from like the artwork, right? That it's like this isn't for men. Like
For people who don't know, yaoi is boys love.
Or on Host Club.
yeah,
Hey,
artwork like that.
listen.
It's like
I actually remember I had a friend in middle school that used to draw that very often.
Everybody had that
All
friend.
the time.
I was about to say that I had a friend who liked to draw hentai.
I was
after
one of them.
found out
No,
what
but
it
she
was.
used to draw.
Part of your
it
checklist,
was-
right? Where's the person? Where's the artist?
Like for her, it was specifically yaoi. Like that was what she did. And then now she's super religious and she pretends she doesn't even know what that means.
I have,
You know, I've
I have
always-
drawn both yaoi and yuri. So.
I've always said that there's two kinds of people in the world. There's people who watch porn and liars. Now, as far as a target audience, I don't know. I've honestly known like more women that are into hentai more so than regular porn. You know what I mean? Or at least are more vocal about it, I suppose. Because like I said, everybody watches porn. But if you meet like an otaku chick, then they usually have no problems talking about what kind of hentai they like.
well,
I did not, you know that.
I think
Did not what?
there's.
I didn't like put up a big deal when we talked about it.
There you go.
I think with guys, right? We don't talk about our fetishes if only because we don't want to be judged for the shit that we look up.
Because men judge each other too much.
I mean, so there's certain levels of judgy, right? We're just be like, dude, that's pretty gross, and dude, you're gonna go to fucking jail.
It's also it's much more common to judge a man for just watching anything like that in general than a woman. Like a woman, you go, oh, she's sexually liberated. And for a guy, it's like, oh, he's just being a pervert.
And it's like,
I
dude,
think,
that's
I think a lot of that comes down to the, I guess, our Judeo-Christian culture,
Yeah.
where, you know, sex is so heavily shamed. Because, I mean, look at fucking Akihabara or something, where, because I think in Japan the population is like 2% Christian, and they don't give a fuck. Like,
They don't.
people just buy fucking titty figurines on the fucking
I mean,
corner store.
Excuse me, sir. Sir, you drunk in porn here? I want you to lose this.
but
You paid money for this, clearly. It has your name on the back cover.
it's
I
not
know
just
what this
Chris-
is worth. You don't want to lose this.
it's not just Christian then, right? Because in Japan, everyone else looks at them like, you're fucking creepy.
Really?
Yeah, dude.
Yeah,
Like,
They
that's-
buy fucking panties at
Sometimes-
vending machines.
that's why they have their own district. They're
Yeah,
like, we don't want you
sometimes they
leaving
don't.
here.
Yeah, sometimes
We don't
they
want you in public.
They don't like it. Though.
Okay, so you're absolutely right. It is not just Christian, because the Japanese have their own like, culture of shame and whatnot.
Yeah, it's probably worse than ours.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the real horror of Japan. Grape flavored milk. What kind of sick monster?
I don't think we have enough time to talk about how awful that is. Yeah, you and I were actually talking about this once. Well, not hentai, obviously. No.
Great flavored milk.
No. No. But you and I were talking about how, like, when it comes to, like, talking, usually men don't talk about their sex lives with each other as some groups of female friends do.
Yeah. Yes.
You guys will talk about it, but not talk about what you're into.
I feel
That's
like-
what I feel like.
I feel like I hear men going, "Oh yeah, I had sex with her, I tapped that ass and shit
Yeah.
like that," but they don't.
But they don't say what they're into.
because my friends and I, we get a little intimate, but I never hear guys doing that.
Well, yeah, because I think I don't know. I think it's just like so I was holding my balls a certain way. And I don't want to hear that, dude.
Well, I think there's a couple of schools of thought that go into that. You know, when you're I think that when you're in the moment, when you're having sex with somebody, you're not necessarily the same person you are in everyday life. I think it reveals something. And that's a conversation that I actually think one of the doujins that we're looking at today brought up, but I'll save it for that. But I think when you're having sex, when you're, I guess, aroused, it awakens some sort of primal aspect of yourself, some sort of deeper truth of who you are. And I think we as human beings just tend to kind of obfuscate that because I guess it makes us vulnerable in a certain way. I mean, also, you know, society is just getting over the point where, you know, gay is a bad word, and, you know, dudes talk about, dude, that's gay. You're gay. You're again. So whereas women don't fucking care. They've never given a fuck.
Most of us don't.
So before...
I don't mean to generalize. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry if that was at all offensive. I did not mean that.
So any last thoughts about hentai before I do my bit of a monologue to end the episode?
Hentai is cool. Watch more of it.
Also, you should probably be 18 if you're going to listen to this.
Just forget the last 30 minutes if you're underage.
By the way,
Disclaimer.
Going forward from this point out, while we all have pretty much admitted to seeing pornography while we were adolescents, if you are not an adult, you are technically not supposed to be listening to this.
we all broke the law.
So as I said, the point of this podcast is going to be for us to examine hentai doujins. We may get into actual animated hentai at some point through the lens of literary criticism, so I'm just going to go ahead and answer the question. If you don't know what literary criticism is, literary criticism is not saying whether a text is good or bad. That is subject to a person's preferences. Rather, a literary criticism is a process through which we examine a text for its meaning. This meaning isn't necessarily a moral or a central theme, but what commentary the text is making about the human condition. Unless a person or group will narrow down, usually a person or group will narrow down the focus of what they are looking for within a text into specific theories or schools of thought, such as moral criticism or psychoanalytic criticism. What we here are trying to do is mostly focus on what commentary the text is making about human sexuality, psychology, and gender and interpersonal relationships. So you've probably heard me use the word text a few times already. Throughout these podcasts, the word text will be used when referring to the work we are examining. In literary criticism, text is a term used to address a work. While the work is usually a piece of fiction, such as a novel or a book of poems, text can be used to refer to books of nonfiction, graphic novels, films, pieces of visual art, and in our case, hentai doujins. Finally, you may be wondering why or how literary techniques used to examine novels and poems can be applied to visual works such as hentai. Well, without going into the full history of literary criticism is a foundation for other types of criticism, including those applied to visual arts such as film, and thus already has techniques which can be applied to the visual aspects of hentai. The presence of narrative devices such as dialogue, plot, settings within hentai also lend themselves easily to literary criticism. So then that comes to the question, why are we looking at hentai this way? Well, the obvious answer is seriously examining hentai for its literary merit is funny and entertaining. However, perhaps we can get to a point of serious discussion about what these works have to say about human psychology, sexuality, and relationships. Hentai may be an erotic graphic art form made in Japan for a primarily Japanese audience, but the readership and influence of hentai has spread globally. Websites which host hentai boast anywhere from tens of thousands of monthly viewers to the millions. Fans translate these works free of cost into multiple languages. As easy as it would be to dismiss hentai as mere masturbatory fodder, the fact is that it has a narrative structure which lends itself to literary criticism just as well as any other literary text, in addition to the visual elements provided by the artwork. Whether by the author's intent or happenstance, any text can be broken down in search for meaning has some merit, regardless of the stigmas associated with it, such as the stigmas associated with pornography. The fact that this isn't something any serious literary scholar would consider only makes doing this more exciting. We hope that you have some fun listening to these podcasts, as their premise can certainly be construed as silly, but there is a sincere hope that you will be able to walk away from this having earnestly considered questions about the nature of human relationships, sexuality, and psychology, and will apply the techniques and discussions we use here in your day-to-day lives. So, who here would like to sign us out? Jess.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Hentai Literature Club. Remember, don't ever be ashamed of who you are. Let your freak flag fly. There we go. So, if you are listening to this on SoundCloud, please follow. If you're listening to this on YouTube, please subscribe. Either way, we have a whole bunch of social media links down below if you'd like to get in touch with us, hear about some of the new stuff we've got going on or coming up, or just want to call us a bunch of perverts. We wouldn't necessarily disagree with you. If you really, really like what we're doing, we do have a Patreon that helps us get better equipment and provide more professional looking and sounding content.
Give us money to talk about porn.
You know what? If anything comes of this, right, I sincerely hope that we can write off porn as a tax deduction, because I want Uncle Sam to buy me porn.
Uncle Sam's gonna pay for that Faku subscription Xavier doesn't want. Yeah, we have tons of social media. Well, we hope you enjoyed what this is essentially a preliminary episode to the podcast, which will be episode 0, and we hope you listen to the next episode, which will be episode 1, where we talk about boobs.